What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a bit of a different type of video. I think this is the first time I have a guest on the channel. So we have Jake today with us. We're going to talk a little bit about House of the Dragon. And probably all of you already know Jake if you know me, but still, maybe Jake should introduce himself quickly.
Hello, I'm Jake. If you've just recently found the channel because of the House of the Dragon videos, there's a good chance you don't know who I am. But I have been, I know Sheikh in Discords a lot, and we also did a Fire and Blood chat. I definitely am less focused on House of the Dragon stuff and more on book stuff. So how this is going to work is he's going to be I've been reading all the news of House of the Dragon guy, and I'm just going to be like well, I think Fire and Blood, the book is good. So let's go. And I'm probably he's probably gonna be like, yeah, they said this, and I'm gonna be like, wait, really? So I'm much more book focused, and maybe upload slightly more regularly than Jake. Who knows?
Slightly, but that might change with House of the Dragon.
Yeah, I'm actually still a book channel. You're gonna pass me in subscribers because you're gonna sell out and become a House of the Dragon channel.
I know. I'm still have some book content, but I've been thinking about book content, and I'm like, but I want to talk about this. Like, I've also been reading a bit less right now because I'm just like, I'd rather read Reddit and waste my time looking at ads for House of the Dragon. Anyway, so how high is your hype level right now for the show?
I would say, so I would like to preface, I've been saying since like the wave of fantasy shows that I have generally been trying to not have opinions on how good shows will be until I've actually seen them. And I failed at this with House of the Dragon because I'm hyped. I'm so convinced it's gonna slap. This is where I'm at.
Yeah, same for me. Like the more the more trailers came out, the more people started like seeing. They're having some premieres going on for episode 1. I've been just getting more and more hyped. So we're only a week out, but I can't wait. So what I wanted to do today is kind of to talk a little bit about what we're expecting. What people maybe should know, and some of the challenges that they're going to face with doing this story. So obviously it's like covering one part of Fire and Blood, which is interesting because it's not like a direct adaptation of a novel, but more like they have cliff notes basically, and they can like fill in stuff. So it's kind of a unique story, right? Like I don't know if any other fantasy adaptation that's done kind of like they have a lot of events that they know, but then they have to fill up everything like character dynamics, relationships and stuff. So I think it's really going to be interesting because also we as book fans, we won't know everything that's going to happen. So
I mean, if you think about it, it's almost more like what people have when they make like movies or TV shows based on real events, but like all they have is the records of what happened in history. Like they don't know what the dialogue was or like what was going on in people's head, except obviously with the disadvantage that this time they have one book instead of a lot, but the advantage that they can literally just talk to the author. No one in reality can, there isn't no writer of like, you can't go talk to the writer and be like, yeah, so when you were writing World War II, what happened at Dunkirk? The records are a bit unclear, which they can do here. It's obviously it's going to be a challenge compared to Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones, they just took the dialogue. You're just like, we need dialogue.
Copy paste.
We have dialogue now.
Like
Control C, Control V.
That's actually like one of my major concerns is whether they can nail the dialogue, because I think the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, which is what this should be like given what it's covering, they had a lot of good dialogue. And I'm kind of worried that if the TV writers can't keep up with that, because there's a very high bar that they set. Like we have some dialogue or some small snippets of what people might have said, but they have to really do the major legwork in that regard, right? So
yeah, it's going to take I think in terms of it has potential to be as good or even better than Game of Thrones, like the source material. But it's going to take a lot more work than adapting Game of Thrones did. Is a lot more work.
I think like it's interesting to compare the two actually, right? Like with Game of Thrones, it was like coming out at a time where people weren't doing fantasy TV and not giving it high budget. So right, they kind of have a blueprint on how to do stuff, but at the same time, the material they're covering is like a lot harder to adapt. and especially to like make coherent, I think. And it's interesting because they already have been doing some changes, right? And I think that's one thing that, as I mentioned, like book readers will be surprised with certain things because certain character interpretations won't line up with what we're expecting necessarily. And like in Fire and Blood, obviously we have 3 different versions of each event, right? So it'll be interesting to see like which one they choose or if they do a mixture of them. I know you're a very big fan of Mushroom, and you want the whole story.
But and also that's another thing that they're gonna have to change characters because in Fire and Blood, a lot of characters like are not characters. Like their character is that they're the Lord of Riverrun. Unlike in A Song of Ice and Fire, like even 100, 200 characters down, you can be like, oh, who's that person? And you can like describe their character relatively in depth and who they are. So for a lot of them, like they don't have the ability for House of the Dragon to just take, oh, who do we think this character is and what are the relationships we know about? Oh, we just deem that. Like they have to add to every character because while Fire and Blood works, like you feel like the characters are interesting, it's impressive because of how much it does with so little. If they for a TV show don't add to any of the characters, I think they're gonna feel a little bit flat just because of the change in format, especially for the supporting cast. Because like they only really focus on any relationships that are directly related to the big historical events.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think with that, it will be interesting to see how we as book readers react. Like, I think supporting cast is one thing, but also like with the main characters, like we've seen that already from the trailers. They've kind of aged up Ranira / aged down Allison to make them kind of the same age. And they've changed their character dynamic, right? Like they're supposed to be best friends now in the show, which is a bit different than what was in the book. But I actually think it's a good change because it will add a more dramatic tension and that kind of help that arc be more emotional down the line. So I think that's actually one of the things that I think was a smart thing to change. Also, it kind of makes Ranira more adult when things are starting happening. So
also like though, a lot of time, like, do we really know what Ranira and Allison's relationship with each other is in the book? I mean, we know there's animosity, but before there's animosity, like it's not like, when if they're adapting Wheel of Time or Game of Thrones, it's like we know what everyone's relationship is with everyone. Sometimes for some things that are like changes in Fire and Blood to House of the Dragon, it could be like George is like, oh, well, this is actually what it's like. And we're not getting a change. We're learning like actually what happened, right? And my guess is this is going to happen at least one time, probably more like 5 times, maybe 10, where people are going to freak out about a change. And then later George is going to be like, that's actually just what happened. And I told them. And then a bunch of people are going to look very silly.
I mean, that's already happening. I don't know if you've seen this rumor with this. It's in the extended trailer where Viserys is kind of talking to Rhaenyra about our line is too easily ended. I don't want to start spoiling stuff. So there is some interesting change that George mentioned in like an interview in 2020 that apparently from this premiere, people have been confirming that, okay, there is a thing that wasn't in the book, but that George has talked about in an interview, which will be part of the show. And there have already been people that are like, well, why are they changing this stuff that changes the whole dynamic of what's happening? It doesn't, but it's interesting. And in terms of the Allison-Rhaenyra relationship, though, I think the issue most people were having is that Allison is like, I think, 8-9 years older than Rhaenyra in the book, whereas now they're like kind of the same age. But again, like I think making them the same age and actually making them best friends at the start and actually contrasting how their lives differ at court is actually an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, that seems like a change that adds complexity and sources of conflict to the story. I don't see a problem. I mean, they have to. I know I normally get sick of people saying they have to change things because I'm often just like, do they though? Do they have to change these things, or did they just want to change these things?
So you're sick of Brandon Sanderson, is what you're saying.
Well, if I were adapting, like he's adapting his own work, so I get it. But if someone else was adapting Brandon's work, I would want them to follow the Ged from the Wizard of Earthsea philosophy, which is only basically interfere when you have to. That's like, I think if you're adapting, like, this is what I think is the difference between Dune and Wheel of Time, both of which made changes. It seems like Wheel of Time people, when they were like, hey, should we make this change? The question was like, hey, can we make this change? And if they come to a conclusion like, yeah, I think we can make this change, they change it. For Dune, it was, do we have to make this change? Like, we don't want to, but I think we have to. And then it's like, yeah, I think we do have to. For as much as I hate it, because I'm normally on the line of like, I think most really faithful adaptations tend to be good. I don't think you can do a really faithful adaptation of Fire and Blood because it's a history book. I mean, if you do a really faithful adaptation of Fire and Blood, you have 6 lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
That you also have like 5 people who are actually characters in a cast of what's going to probably be over 100.
That's
like,
actually
these things don't work.
It's interesting because George actually mentioned, I think he was on some podcast and he was like, I suggested at the start to actually do it the way it is in Fire and Blood, to be like, we have these 3 different versions. And like you have a framed narrative where there is maybe a maester that's going through different sources. And then you have the actors play out 3 different versions of the same event. And the HBO was like, oh, that probably won't work.
That probably won't work, yeah.
But apparently there is a movie like about Caesar that did that. I forgot the name, but George mentioned that he was like, he was interested in doing that, which is funny to me.
Maybe the fact that none of us know what movie this is a sign that it wasn't super successful. I don't think the HBO was like, oh, he really liked the movie. Okay. Well, he likes, yeah. I think HBO was probably like, wait, your pitch is that this movie that 19 people watched, of which you were one of, did this? We actually want more than 20 people to watch this, George. Yeah. Obviously, people would watch it because it's...
Yeah. But from his perspective, it makes sense, right? Like, as the author, like, he came up with this whole thing because he found it interesting. So it makes sense that he would kind of try to think if it's adaptable that way. But I think, obviously, going this route is simpler and makes a bit more sense. Is maybe narratively a bit more logical to do it this way.
Also, can you imagine trying to hire actors and just be like, yeah, you're going to be in a bunch of scenes. Oh, yeah, this is your role. You're the Lord of Riverrun. Oh, what's my character like? You don't have one. You're just the Lord of Riverrun. And sometimes things need to happen and they're going to happen to you and you're going to be involved. So we're going to need you to act.
I mean, you're making fun of the Lord of Riverrun. Do you?
I'm just picking a random castle, okay?
It doesn't seem random. Do you remember their names?
No.
You don't remember their name? Okay. It's the Sesame Street guys. It's the Kermit, Elmo, and Grover.
I'm bad at remembering names, Sheikh. Okay. You've only read like 2 books since Fire and Blood, so they're still fresh in your head. I've read like 1,000 characters since I read that.
That's fair. But what I wanted to ask is, like, do you think they'll keep those names? You think they're actually?
I don't know. Why not?
That would be. And people would make fun of it.
That's okay. People would make fun of it.
That would be a change I would be okay with. But I mean, I would laugh if they actually keep them.
I want them to keep them now. I don't even know what they are, and I want them to keep them.
You don't.
I'll riot if they change those names, Sheikh. I'm abandoning the House of the Dragon hype train if the Lords of Riverrun have new names.
Can you imagine, like, in that scene we've seen in the trailer where everybody's swearing their feud to Ranira? You have like, I Rickon Stark, I Corlys Velaryon, I Borman Baratheon, I Elmo Tully. Now I won. But
yeah, anyway, so it sounds like a fantastic scene that should be on screen.
Yeah, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked, but yeah, like, why I mentioned the Allison Ranira thing specifically is that, especially, like, there is in the fandom, there is this divide between people who support each side of this conflict, right? Like, and they're quite vehemently supporting their side. Like, I don't know, you're maybe not as involved in that, but like.
No, I'm not, but I'm curious how you would support one of the sides.
That's the interesting thing, right? Like, because both sides, like, that's.
I mean, I get in hindsight, I can be like, hey, maybe this would be better because I know one of the people. They kind of both suck, but I know one of them specifically sucks. But also, like, with the information you have, it's obvious who the rightful heir is. I feel like.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. But also the rightful heir also does some very questionable things, right? And
yeah, but to be fair, she does that later. That, you know, you can't when making a choice, like, you know, in whatever the year was, 200 after conquest, you can't be like, well, they're going to do something bad in 194 after conquest. It's like, well, that hasn't happened yet, and maybe it wouldn't. Maybe they went insane because you tried to civil war them. Did you ever consider that?
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe a bit more. We can make another video about that, actually, when that starts happening. We'll discuss this, because I think there's actually an interesting discussion about this. Like, we already had it in our Fire and Blood chat a bit. Like, I agree with you that, like, at the start, when she's named heir, that should be, like, the king said it, it's the law, technically.
I mean, so one of the cases for the heir is this person's clearly the heir. The other case is finders keepers, I'm in King's Landing, get wrecked, scrub. Like,
yeah, but there is stuff that happens in between those that kind of muddles the lines a bit, but I don't want to make this like super spoilery. So
okay,
let's talk about this when we talk about, I assume, episode 4 or 5 is where
whatever episode that covers it.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically what happened recently is the actress that's playing young Allison, I think it was on the Comic-Con panel, she said that basically she was arguing that Allison is not the villain of this story. Like, she was talking about how she kind of conceived Allison and how she's playing her. And she kind of talked about she was writing a diary from Allison's point of view to kind of flesh out the character. And she basically said she doesn't see Allison as the villain of the story, which I agree with. I don't think Allison is like the villain. I don't think either.
Only a villain.
I think that's the thing. Like, I don't think it's that similar.
Everyone is a villain in this.
Yes, exactly.
Everyone is terrible. For those of you who have not read Fireblood, expect everyone to be terrible.
Exactly. That's like,
except like 2 people, or like 2 cool people.
That's like my first point on my list for today. It's like gray character. Okay, it's a second point actually, but anyway. So people who support the other side were hounding her on Twitter for saying, like, have you read the book? Are you crazy? How can you say that she's not the villain? And that's something I'm like worried about, is like, book fans should chill out a bit and maybe think about this. Like, have you read the book? Like, both sides, there isn't a clearly good side. That's like the interesting part of the story, right? Like, if there was a clearly good side, it would kind of not be a George R.R. Martin story.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear there is a side that's the heir. I think it's also clear that both sides kind of suck. Like, if we could just pick none of the above and we could just like resurrect Jaehaerys, that would be resurrection in A Song of Ice and Fire has consequences.
Blue-eyed Jaehaerys.
But you know what? Screw it. I'll take mentally destroyed, resurrected Jaehaerys over any of these idiots. That's what I'm going with.
That would be an interesting fanfic to see play out.
Although it's also possible that the history writer, while writing this, was just like, these idiots almost destroyed the realm. I'm going to only focus on their bad things.
I do think so. I do think they'll make both sides a bit more likable, especially at the start, because otherwise it will kind of get annoying, I guess, if you just have actually all the time everybody's just doing bad things. I think they'll make it a bit like, you were getting a bit annoyed, not annoyed, but like when the trailer came out, there is the line where Ranira says, "I will create a new order," and you were like, "Well, that's funny."
Was it me that was? Did I get annoyed by that?
I think like not annoyed.
Oh no, I was laughing at her. I was like,
yeah, exactly. But I think it's like, again, that line isn't in the book because we don't have dialogue, but it will make for an interesting character after we see her start there and then end up where we. Exactly. So I think it's kind of logical to make them more sympathetic at the start. Again, that's why I also think that the Allison Ranira friendship is a very good choice, because you'll see them be nice to each other and then all hell breaks loose. That's actually
I can't wait for people to hold these 2 positions at the same time. It's going to tilt me off the face of the earth. Are you ready? Position 1, Fire and Blood is an extremely unreliable text that is not actually a very accurate depiction of what happened, and you have to constantly be reading through the lines. And we don't actually know what happened a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Position 2, this show is stupid. It's not following what happened in Fire and Blood.
I don't even know how you can argue the second one. Like, there are 3 different conflicting versions of everything in Fire Emblem.
Yeah, and people are still going to do it. I guarantee it. I'll wager on it right now. People
Yeah,
are going to hold those at the same time and just ignore the contradiction.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to see like how all of this plays out because, yeah, Allison Ranira, like my favorite shot from the whole trailer was where they show young Allison and young Ranira, and I think it's Otto Hightower saying like our hearts remain as one, and then it switches to the adult versions and it says our hearts were never one, and like just those 2 shots show such a big conflict, and I'm like really looking forward to see like how that whole dynamic will develop over the course of the season.
I can't wait for like the 2 things Mushroom got right.
I still think you're undervaluing Mushroom's information. Like that's we'll see.
Actually, the only line of dialogue that I'm like, this better be line for line from the book is the guys when he's talking about like how strong her children are.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna need to have that line for line.
There's no way they don't do that. Like,
yeah, it'll be in there. It's gonna be fantastic as well.
Yeah,
I love that speech.
Yeah, and there's also like I think we get some lines from Damon in the book. I think they'll also keep those. Like he says about something about his first wife, who he's not very nice to. Something about the people in the whale and their sheeps being better looking than their women and stuff. I think that's something that will probably stay in there. Yeah. Anyway, so another thing I wanted to talk about is a bit like, so with Game of Thrones, we had like this very expansive story, right? Like we had 5 different plot lines going at the same time. With this one, we'll be a bit more concise. Do you think that will be like a better thing for the show, or do you think it will be, yeah, not as good, like to get more people into it?
I'm not actually sure in show version it will be more concise. I think it feels more concise because a lot of the stories are just like people we don't really care about in the book because it's just like their character is their name. But I feel like in the show, a lot of the things that are just like mentioned, that are just like a paragraph. And then this happened involving this dude of House Baratheon and this dude of House Lannister. That's instead like actually going to be a scene where we care about things. Also, by the way, if so I think it's probably going to feel more expensive than it did in the book version of it. I mean, if you think of it this way, I don't know how many seasons this is going to be. I imagine it'll be like 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, I think they said 3 to 4 is what they're planning.
Yeah,
I'm
3 to
hoping
4.
For 4.
So it's 3 to 4 based on like 250 pages instead of the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones were about 3,000? Like 3,000 pages.
Yeah, roughly.
So I think like this show is definitely going to expand based on like the narrative it's being adapted from compared to most adaptations which have to figure out where to cut something.
Yes.
So I'm not fully convinced that that House of the Dragon, the TV show, will feel less expansive with less plot lines than Game of Thrones, the TV show, did.
That's interesting. Because like what I was mainly basing this on is because like in the first season in Game of Thrones, we have like mainly 4 plot lines, right? Like we have all the politics stuff, which in itself is like quite expansive, but like just to simplify. Then we have like John, who is at the fringes of the story. We have Danny, that's completely separate, and then we have Bran, who's kind of doing his own thing. I feel like this will be more focused on just the main politics story, but maybe you're right. Like maybe we'll, because that's actually another thing I wanted to bring up is like we don't have a lot of fan favorite houses that will be highlighted in the show if they stick with the book. So we won't have Starks and Lannisters, which I was going to bring up. So maybe that's their way to get those houses in.
We got Targaryens now, though.
That's true. Like, but for me, like, I think one of the major things will be to see if people latch onto like House Hightower and House Velaryon as they did with Starks and Lannisters.
Or if they'll just be like, hey, you're not who I thought would be important. Why aren't the same people who are important now important then?
Yes, that's kind of what I'm like wondering.
I can't, because everyone knows the theme of all the ice and fire stuff is how stable feudal politics are, and how when people are powerful, they always stay on top forever.
Every single time.
Every single time. Yes, I definitely read the books and was paying attention when reading those books.
Like, but this is more like for me, from a mainstream point of view.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Because people will be like, hey, we're the Lannisters. I don't care about hating these people. I want to dislike Lannister people.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think they'll probably introduce, like, there are some Lannisters that are in the story later on. And there is one major Stark character. Maybe they'll introduce them earlier. And maybe, like, as you said, maybe they'll keep up with them as the story goes on. But
also, that Stark is really different from Ned Stark.
Yeah.
Which where people will be like, wait a second, Stark?
Yeah.
I thought Stark good. Always.
Yeah. No. The Stark raised by Aaron equals good. Stark raised by Stark is depends. Like, I think that's actually interesting because especially in the show, I think in the books we get a better idea of, like, Ned is raised by John Aaron. He's not raised by his father, right? So he has more values from the Aaron side, whereas his older brother, who's the wild wolf, who's like basically the Stark version of, I don't know, Robert, but maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Like, but I think, like, it will be interesting if they incorporate the Starks and Lannisters more. But at the core, like this, like in the first show we had Stark, Lannister, and Baratheon was like mainly what the politics was about. And then we had like Dany and Viserys at the side. Now it will be Valerion, Targaryen, and Hightower. So I think it will be important to build up, especially the Hightowers and the Valerians, to give them like that same maybe depth, and to get us to like those characters.
Although they did kind of pull it off, like, because in Game of Thrones, some houses got introduced later, and you know when Oberyn Martell shows up, people are like, Dorne, I don't care. People are like, oh, this guy's cool. Same thing like for the Tyrells, they showed up late to the party, but people still, I think, definitely got invested in the Tyrells. They just didn't have their thing in the opening credits, but even though they're like, we're doing more, and it's all the Starks are just not doing much right now.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see a lot of Highgarden anyway. Like, I think we only saw Highgarden once, right?
Yeah, we only saw it once, and apparently, and the scene we got was so disappointing.
Never mind.
I just have to erase that from my memory. Okay.
We had a good line from Olenna. Like, we got a good line from Olenna for that. So
we did, but the entire situation made no sense. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, people here don't know that. Actually, I was going to say, I don't want to go back into the Game of Thrones negativity, right? I was going to mention that you have different opinions than maybe other people about other than season 8 stuff.
Well, I mean, I just like season 6 less, and then I think post season 4, the best section is not in season 6. The best section is stuff at the wall in season 5. And I think a lot of the scenes in season 6, while hype on first watching, make absolutely no bloody sense. And I think D&D getting away with them and them being that successful probably was definitely a bad thing, because it taught them, hey, if we can make it hype enough, people won't care that it makes no sense. And the people who say it makes no sense will just be told they're nitpickers. And it's like, no, it's a problem. It needs to make sense. Can only ride off it making sense 2 seasons ago for so long.
Yeah, it caught up with them in the end. But yeah, that's not what this is about. Yeah, so let me see. Okay, what characters are you like most hyped to see on screen from the story?
I'm bad at it. This guy even has an iconic nickname, and I'm forgetting it. The guy that everyone's mad at him for having like the Valerian sea snake, sea something.
Yeah, Corlys.
Yeah, Corlys. I'm most excited for Corlys. I love that dude.
Oh, he will be so good. Like the way he's being portrayed in the trailers, I think him and Damon, I think, are kind of Damon
Yeah,
is
I'm
one
also
that I'm like, yeah,
Matt Smith's such a good casting for Damon.
yeah, I think he will knock it off. And like from what we've been hearing about the premiere, people have been saying that he's kind of the highlight so far. So that will be interesting to see. And then also they have a dynamic between them going on. So yeah, apparently we're going to see the Stepstone stuff early in the season. So
The real question is, which was it? Was it Robert who made the very foolish decision to get rid of all the swords on the ground, or was it a later Targaryen person who made that? Because you know the Iron Throne for this, like it's got the swords surrounding the Iron Throne,
yeah,
and someone got rid of those, and I'm thinking it was probably Robert, which I think means House of the Dragon just made Bobby B canonically uncool, and I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't think it would be Robert. I could see them changing it throughout the show. Like
maybe, hopefully it's not Robert, because that would be uncool if you Robert.
Yeah, because I think if they make it Robert, like they would be retconning stuff because we've seen flashbacks of the Mad King on the other throne.
Oh, that's true.
So I think it would be before that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they like change it throughout the show, either when a big change of power happens.
That's possible. Okay, yeah, that's possible.
Or like they did say that this may end up being an anthology series. Did you know that?
A what series, sorry?
So they mentioned that they want to do 3 to 4 seasons about the dance, and then they might switch to a different period of the Targaryens.
Oh, okay. They might. I wonder if they'll adapt something that like George has written, but is in Blood and Fire, and George will just be like, "Here you go." I like reading the books first, though, so I hope they don't do that.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I don't know, like if they could just continue like linearly and just keep going. Yeah. So if they end up doing that, there is a lot of time to show why the throne changed. Yeah, I'm not worried too much about the throne because I think the throne looks sick. I mean,
it does. It looks cool. Yeah.
Even if they keep it in our let's just retcon it. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, you know, and they have to just fix some other retcons, so they're gonna just have a Starbucks show up just for internal consistency.
Somebody actually,
like, I got this new thing from Winterfell. They have a Starbucks there.
Like, there actually somebody asked them at the Comic-Con panel. Like one panel was like, "Did they ban Starbucks cups for you?" They're just like, "No." Actually, like that Comic-Con panel, like the fan questions were a bit weird. Like the first question was somebody telling Matt Smith like it's Morbin time, and he was just like, "What?" He was like, "What does that mean?" It was like a bit cringe. Yeah. So in terms of characters, like I'm actually looking forward to see how they do Ranira. I think Ranira, like young Ranira especially, has been looking amazing in the trailers, and like her dynamic with basically everybody. I think, can we say that she's basically the main character of this, especially like in season 1? Like,
yeah, I guess she's the closest thing to the protagonist.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to see how they do that, and especially I have one thing that I want to mention a bit later. But also, so Ranira, Rhaenys, the queen who never was, like her lines in the trailer so far, like I never thought about like how her dynamic with Ranira and how her dynamic with Allison would be in the book, but they've kind of given us glimpses of that in the trailer, and I'm like super hyped to see how she does. And also that actress just seems like she's super into this. She's super into the topic. So yeah, I'm hyped to see Rhaenys. And yeah, as you said, Corlys. Viserys actually as well, because George said that Viserys in the show is better than Viserys in the book.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's just I don't know. I had my tier list, and I think I had Viserys a little bit higher than some other people do because he just kind of was oblivious. I don't think he actually actively caused bad things to happen. He just completely failed to stop it. But we'll see what the case in the show is.
I don't know. I should maybe do a tier list myself.
Yeah. So this is, I think, not a lot of credit. Like I still had him low, but you do get some credit for having things not fall apart while you were alive.
Like literally the moment you die.
Okay, yeah, that's bad, but I mean, there would have been some other king who would have like gone bad while he was still alive. So I think he does get. I mean, it's very hard for me to be like, hey, this is the guy who ruled over the period of most prosperity for the history of Westeros. Bottom tier. Which, yes, he didn't rule over the period of prosperity because of himself, but also he didn't screw it up until after he died. Okay. He kept it. At least he got that period. The people who lived through those years got to be not starving and didn't die of civil war. And they could have died of civil war, and it could have just sucked right away. So I'm giving him just a small amount of credit for that, even though he's still pretty useless.
See, I want to say something, at least spoiler, where I'm like, regarding the strong boys and
they're very strong.
They're very strong. Have you seen their casting? Actually, they cast them so perfectly. They cast them so perfect. Yeah,
they better keep that line.
They will for sure keep that line. Okay. Yeah, it would be weird to not keep it. Like, we're sure that they are who we think they are, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Like,
that's what Mushroom got right. That's his entire purpose.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see how they play that whole thing out. Yeah. But now, I don't know, like, man, Viserys, I think I blame him more than you do. I think I also, like, the more I think about it, I also blame Jaehaerys more than you probably do. Like, I don't think he's, like, directly responsible for it, but I do think, like, he is mainly the reason why this whole thing started blowing up.
I mean, so this is the thing. Like, Jaehaerys, he had to get really unlucky for his actions causes. Like, he had like 4 good plans, and then they all failed. Some of them were kind of his fault. Some of them were just like, Plan B got appendicitis. Like, but either way, it's not his fault. Okay. And then he's just like, now I'm stuck with like Plan F. Damn. Like, can't blame the guy for being like, hey, this person's like 8th backup plan didn't have all the kinks worked out.
I'm not even in that sense saying that he's at fault. I think he would be the strongest king in line to actually make a law about this stuff. That would be like long term.
Also, yeah, and by the time they had to figure it out, he was kind of senile.
That's true. Yeah, but I mean, I don't blame him. Like, he's not the first person to blame, but I do think he could have. Obviously, didn't know that this was going to happen. But if he did some decisions differently, then he could have avoided this whole thing. Maybe depends.
I mean, but yeah, if he knew everything that happened, he could have made different choices. But like, I'm gonna steal the quote from Harry Dresden. And be like, Jaehaerys, if you could do it all again, but only knowing actually what you knew at the time, not with any other knowledge, would you do anything differently? Because it's weird to be like, you could do it all again, knowing everything. Yeah, of course you do something differently. Who would ever do something exactly the same? Like, what has ever gone perfectly ever to the point where with complete knowledge of what happened, you couldn't be like, maybe I could improve it.
And, like, I agree, but also I don't see why he had to pass over Rhaenys.
Okay,
like, this isn't a spoiler for the show, so I'm okay talking about this because
this is like the entire premise. So
yeah, like, this is stuff I talked about in my last video. I made a whole video about the background story, so if you want that, you go there. But like, passing over Rhaenys, because actually I was reading up for that video. I was reading up on like what the actual succession laws were at the time, and apparently for most of Westeros, for most kingdoms, the way they did it was that first all the sons came first in line, then came all the daughters, and then came the brothers of the king. So it's like your children, like your daughters, come before your brother. That's like the whole male primogeniture thing. So the point is, like, the issue is that Jaehaerys died after his two heirs, right? Like, if Jaehaerys died and Aemon became king, Aemon, who was the father of Rhaenys, then Rhaenys would be his heir, not Balon, who is his brother. The issue was that Aemon wasn't king, Jaehaerys was king, and he decided to name Balon instead of Rhaenys. That's where this whole thing started, right? Like, that's where Allison and Jaehaerys had their falling out, because she was like, why did you pass over Rhaenys, right? So that's kind of the thing where I'm like, that's what set this whole thing up, because Rhaenys probably would have been a better queen than Viserys ended up being a king. But yeah, that's something he couldn't have known, that how Viserys would rule. But yeah, there's some, I think it's a bit more complex than saying like Jaehaerys and Viserys did their best. I think they both thought they were doing their best.
Yeah, and I mean, Viserys, Viserys was oblivious. Like,
Yes.
Viserys, I feel like Viserys, when he was just like, he died thinking, I solved all the problems and everything's gonna go well now.
I'm interested to see how they'll play that in the show, actually. Because, again, so in the trailer, there is his whole dream thing, right, at the start, where he says, like, I placed my heir upon the Iron Throne, and all the dragons roared as one. That's the line he says. There is a separate ad that came out where he doesn't say my heir, he says, I put my son on the throne, and all the dragons roared as one. So it's really interesting to see which one. Like, they edited some stuff for the trailer. Yeah, I think maybe this whole, like, because they're playing around with dragon dreams and stuff and prophetic prophecies and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays that. Yeah. I don't know. I think we know a lot from Fire and Blood, but that's kind of in line with what I said before. Like, we don't know these characters perfectly, maybe.
So we know a lot, but we don't know what we know is actually true.
Exactly.
We know a lot of things. We know a lot of statements. We don't actually know which of those statements are correct.
Yeah. So Viserys, I think, will be interesting because George said he's a more interesting and tragic character in the show than the book version. That leads me to believe that they're not just going to make him this oblivious guy who doesn't realize that he's kind of setting up a civil war. Because
failing to squash a civil war.
Yeah, maybe that's more fair. Yes. Yeah, and also like from how the actor has been portraying it, like what he's been saying, it makes him look like they're making him a bit more complex than he seemed in the book. So yeah, that's something I'm interested to see. Also,
yeah, and I think that's going to be true for like almost every character, right? Because we get very little like actually about the characters. Like we kind of get people's essence, who like the main features about them in Fire and Blood, but it's not like, I don't think from Fire and Blood you could make like a character analysis video and go in depth for any of them. And you probably should be able to do that for a bunch of characters after the show.
Mm-hmm.
So I think almost every character is going to be expanded upon.
Yes, for sure. I think so. In terms of a deep character analysis, I think Daemon is maybe the only one that people have managed to do.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And actually, like yesterday, David Lightbringer, he just did a video called Daemon's Ladies, where he was like going through all the women that Daemon was in love with and kind of using that information to reflect on Daemon's character, like what kind of person he was. It was very good. So if you have 40 minutes to spare, check out that video. Daemon, I think Daemon is going to be so good. I've said that before, but I can't wait to see him. Daemon, correct, sees, the
dragons,
Which dragons are you most looking forward to? Do you like the new designs that they've shown?
This is good, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, like, I think Jaehaerys' dragon was like Vermithor or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sad when I see him being ridden by people who are idiots and doing bad things. I'm going to be like, no, Vermithor, why can't you turn around and tell him, like, Jaehaerys would never do this, you stupid moron, and just, like, breathe fire.
No, that's going to be so. Vermithor and Silver Ring, man. I'm going to be so mad. I was so mad at the book when that happened. I was like, no.
No, like, how? No, these.
And also,
did you not learn how to be cool when the person who was like your dragon rider was cool for like 50 years. Like, come on, you not get some osmosis learning there.
And also, like, those two are the dragons that were like in the cradle with Jaehaerys and Allison. So it's like just the fact that those two other people wrote them also makes me mad, kind of.
Also, Vhagar OP, please nerf.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to see how big Vhagar is. It should be massive.
He better be at least like 5 times as big as Drogon. No, okay, not 5. He better be like, but he better be like, you know, he better be not be able to be like, oh, okay, so he's about as big as Drogon was. No, this dude is like, this dude is centuries old.
Yeah, so I think what it says in the book is like you could ride a horse down Vhagar's gullet. So that's kind of the bar they have. I'm looking forward to the Vhagar, but really I'm super happy with how they made Caraxes look, because he, like, his design just looks so cool with the 2 devil horns.
Yeah, he should look like a mean, vicious, like,
yeah, and the blood worm. So, and actually, I'm really looking forward to see Melis, Rhaenys' dragon, especially because to see how different they make Melis and Caraxes, because both are red.
Wonder what they're gonna for like the scene where like the peasants are trying to become dragon riders and most of them just die. And they'll just have like a montage of just like someone trying to jump on a dragon and just being like, ah.
I don't know how they'll play that actually. Like, it's going to be very interesting. Also similarly to that, like, so I think we're starting with the Great Council of 101, right? Like, it seems like that's the most logical place to start, and we have seen Jaehaerys actually. Are you happy to see Jaehaerys?
Yeah, but it's senile old Jaehaerys.
Yes.
I want prime Jaehaerys. Can we just get a TV show called like Mostly Things Go Well for like 50 years?
That was actually funny because George so somebody at the Comic-Con panel asked George about like what makes a good ruler, what makes a good king, and he gave Jaehaerys basically as an answer, like somebody who sees kingship as a duty rather than as a privilege. And he was like, but that's kind of, people don't like to tell those stories. Like, he was like, nobody is lining up to do a spin-off about Jaehaerys building roads. I was like,
I am George. Give me the road building.
Yeah, but so George agrees. Jaehaerys, I mean, obviously agrees, but Jaehaerys is cool.
Yes.
But
also, while he was building roads, like 1,700 things outside of his control went wrong, just to make it more interesting. And some things inside his control, but less. But a lot of things outside his control went wrong. He did not play on easy mode. Viserys played on easy mode. That's why it's so hard to judge where he goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's the guy, he opened the Being the King of Westeros game menu, and he just like put everything on easy. And he's just like, see, I didn't have any civil wars. Yeah, you played on easy mode, sir. Like, all you had to do was like not go on a murderous rampage, and you would avoid civil war at the time, which, to be fair, is a bar that some Targaryens could not cross. Maegor absolutely would have just started killing people.
Yes, Maegor is a special case.
Is he? He's not even the worst king. There's like 2 who are definitely clearly worse than him.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, those didn't have dragons. Like, Maegor is like with dragons, he's just flying and just scorching the.
Imagine
Sept of Remembrance. Just okay, the faith doesn't like me. Kill all of them.
Imagine Aegon 4 with dragons, Sheikh.
Oh,
although he couldn't ride them. He'd be too fat.
That's not nice. But
what? There's literally a character in A Song of Ice and Fire who gets referred to as too fat to ride a horse as his nickname. Okay. Ooh. And that character's cool. He's got like one of the best feet.
Wyman,
yeah. And that character also has like arguably one of the best monologues in like the entire series.
Yes. I was actually talking about him. So my roommate, he a few months ago, he started watching Game of Thrones. And I was like watching along with him and like discussing with him, and he hated season 8. surprise. And he was kind of asking me a little bit about the differences between books and show. And I was talking about Wyman a bit. And he also found him funny. I didn't mention the speech though. That speech is so good.
Wait, so you were talking about Wyman and you mentioned, what did you tell him? Just like, oh, he's a northern guy, he's too fat to ride a horse. I'm not going to mention this great speech. Like,
no, I mentioned the Frey pie stuff. We were talking about Rickon. That's why I mentioned him. I don't know if you remember the whole Rickon thing in the book right now, because
yes.
Okay, yeah, so that's why I mentioned him. I should have mentioned the speech though. My bad.
You can go back and you can be like, also watch this video. It's on YouTube.
I should actually do that because I'll do that today. Reminder, I should write it down. Anyway. Okay, so what were we talking about? Dragons. Do you think there are too many dragons in this? Or there can't
I'm sorry, that question doesn't make sense to me. That question doesn't make sense to me.
So what I mean is basically we'll have a lot of dragons. I'm super happy they're doing multiple designs for them, because having 20 dragons that look the same, like that's one thing that annoyed me in Game of Thrones, that all 3 dragons look the same, just with slightly different color.
Drogon was also a little bit bigger, totally different.
Yes, it's a little bit bigger, but so the fact I think they said they have 3 different designs now. So the main one from Game of Thrones, and then the 2 we've seen. That's a plus. And also, I think they'll need to be like show personality of the dragons maybe a bit, and how they interact with your dragon riders. Actually, that's something I'm really looking forward to, because at this point, like as you mentioned, it's the height of Targaryen power, and at this point they still have all the knowledge they brought from old Valyria, right? So maybe we'll see some dragon lore and stuff.
Well, not all. They definitely don't have all the knowledge they brought.
No, but like just the ones that they had, basically.
Yeah.
Like I think they mentioned they're going to speak a lot of High Valyrian still.
High Valyrian is cool. I approve.
And like the dragons, actually, they have more commands than just Dracarys. They have actually High Valyrian commands for the dragons now. But yeah, like the whole way that the dragon rider bond works. Will be interesting to see. Also, we saw in the trailer there was this weird device where they put the dragon egg into this pot to heat it, I guess, or something. So I think they might do something like that. Yeah.
So here's my random question, and I actually is there something special about High Valyrian, or do they just do the commands, train dragons to follow commands in High Valyrian just because like it sounds cool? Or could they train a dragon for the person to just be like shooty bang bang and the dragon breathes fire? Like,
I don't know. That's what I want to know.
All right, this is the questions we want. We want to see if
like that's the thing, right? Like it's a Song of Ice and Fire, such high fantasy, so we don't know. But
it could literally be a magical language. Like there might actually be something about High Valyrian that makes it work. I feel like it's more likely that they just train them in High Valyrian because like they thought it was cooler.
And also it's a way to, they already have them. Like it's a way to restrict dragon power as well, because only people who speak Valyrian then, like other people might think, like non-Valyrians might think it only works with Valyrian, right? Like, but the Valyrians know.
Yeah, we can train him to just be like,
yeah.
Can train him to follow Dresden spell commands. Fuego.
Slickambicus. No, but I think it would be really interesting is Valyrian lore in general, because it seems like old Valyria didn't just use dragons for combat stuff. Like there were a lot of dragons, and they have a lot of like magical artifacts, like Valyrian steel, maybe made with dragon fire or something. In the books there are Valyrian roads and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's more technical than we think. And also I think like one of the showrunners mentioned that they kind of approach it in like how to train your dragon type of way. Like he did say something about how to train your dragon. So it will be interesting to see. Like it's still a fantasy show, right? Like I know it's Game of Thrones that people are like, it's not super focused on that stuff. But I think given the fact that we're following the Targaryens and they have dragons, they still have all the knowledge that they had from old Valyria. And like in the lore, like I think it was Baelor the Blessed becomes afterwards that actually he burned all their Valyrian books and stuff. That's why all the stuff was lost, because Baelor was all in on the faith of the Seven. So he burned
And
all
he was
that
slightly
stuff.
crazy, so
Slightly. So yeah, at this point, like there should be more knowledge than it would be an interesting thing to explore, I think.
yeah, I'm expecting it to be higher magic, right? Because I mean, D&D deliberately toned down the magic, even from
Mhm.
like the first few seasons. That's almost like one of the bigger, like if you were to describe the changes for the first 4 seasons in 2 sentences, it would be characters are older, there's less magic.
Yes.
Which
Yeah, but
I'm thinking for this, I'm hoping they keep the magic more like it is. Although, yeah, so I'm expecting, yeah, there to be more of it.
mhm.
Because I think actually even in Fire and Blood, there's not that much because the Maester is like, who's writing this is probably not focusing on any magic stuff.
And
So
maesters are generally anti-magic, so
yeah, so I'm kind of hoping that the show has more magic than the source material
yeah.
because I think that's probably like, I know there isn't a truth of what happened. It's a fictional story, but I feel like what in world happened is probably had more magic than what we got in the text that we're extrapolating from.
And even in Fire and Blood, there are like some characters that seem to have some magical connection. We have Mysaria. We have Mysaria. You remember her? Right? Let me know if you don't remember. I'll tell you. And we have like Alice Rivers, I think. I don't. She's with Aemon later on, and we have Nettles, who also. Those are the main three that people are like. Is there some weird magical thing happening with those? Damon could also be interested in magic, given his proclivities, hanging out with Mysaria and stuff. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to explore there. Like I don't just want it to be completely political, like that's only concise on that. I think it would be interesting to explore more.
I mean, we have 20
stuff.
dragons, so
We do.
it definitely. I mean, there has to be some magic there because it can't just be a historical fiction that happens to be set on this map because historical fiction is rather low on dragons.
We don't know. I can add dragons, but I don't. Let's not
We're
get into
fairly
that.
confident.
I think Kyle might disagree with you, but that's a separate issue. Let's.
No, he would.
You would agree?
That historical fiction doesn't have dragons?
I don't know, but he says Warlord is historical fiction. No.
He says what? Yeah, Warlord doesn't have. That's because he says Warlord. There's not actual magic. If it has magic, this is the Kyle distinction. Kyle, watching this, you can let me know if you think I'm being unfair here. Historical fiction set in a historical time period that's like the names are correct, no magic. Historical fantasy set in a historical time period, but there is magic. So if you had a historical fiction that's set in like England, but there's a dragon, historical fantasy. Not historical fantasy, what Guy Gavriel K does, which is set in like a slightly different version of history with small amounts of magic. Let me know if I've represented you accurately there, Kyle.
Yes. I lined you up. I lined you up to talk about Guy Gavriel K.
Yes.
So, okay, I thought you would just say something. Read Guy Gavriel K, people. Read Guy Gavriel K.
Yeah, see, he said it. He said it.
I said it. I have not read him, but
well,
this guy read everything by him.
Except the poetry book. I haven't read the poetry book.
Okay. So
I don't.
Okay. Now, so let's talk a little bit about the challenges and stuff. We've kind of hit on some of them, like the book fans need to chill out a bit, not stop harassing actors for stuff they say.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not going to be a lot of people. Like, I'm sure most of the fans are going to be chill, but just don't be the person who isn't chill. Like, there's not going to be that many. Just don't be that guy. Just don't be that person.
And again, like there was this one guy on Twitter who was talking to Emily Carrick, again, the actress who plays young Allison. And he was like, "Have you even read Fire and Blood?" She was like, "Yes." Like, I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, obviously she shouldn't think that Allison is a villain. Like, it's good that she has a more nuanced approach to her character, right? Like, you don't just want Allison to be like, she's just scheming all the time. That's it. Like,
yeah, that's like if like Charles Dance was playing Tywin, was talking about how he got into character as Tywin and seeing the world from Tywin's belief and from like Tywin's how Tywin sees the world, and people were like, oh, this person thinks Tywin is a good guy. They don't understand the source material. Like, kick rocks, dude. Kick rocks. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah. So that's one thing, and I think we'll see this maybe not as much this season. Like this season, I think it will be more like, why are they changing stuff? Why are they changing character dynamics? Next season, when we get into the greens and black stuff, it will be interesting to see how this fandom gets divided. Because this already exists in the book fandom. Like, there are people who are vehemently,
which I still don't get.
I
still don't get. One side is just obviously there, but whatever.
So you're declaring Team Black.
I forget which is which.
Team Black is who you're talking about.
The team that didn't.
Team Green is Allison.
Okay, yeah, I'm Team Black then. Let's go. Even though all the people on Team Black suck, but they're the heir. Like, whatever. Everyone on Team Green sucks as well, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll talk about this when the show starts, because
I think I'm on Team Corlys Velaryon murdering everyone and just being like, I'm in charge now.
That would be fun.
But then the thing is that would mean he sucks because he killed everyone.
I'm on Team Black until 120 AC, and then I'm like,
Okay, because we can't have Corlys killing
actually,
everyone,
no, not even
not
even 120 AC. 111 AC, I think, is the year. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The year.
Okay, I'm on Team not Corlys killing everyone, because if Corlys killed everyone, then he's now also sucks, and so then the only person who doesn't suck isn't around. I'm on Team everyone except Corlys gets appendicitis, and he's like, I guess I'm in charge now.
No, I don't even. I'd have to go through and check who would be in charge in that case. Like, who would?
No, I don't care. Everyone who would be in charge above Corlys got appendicitis. Sheikh.
I don't like.
However many people need to get appendicitis for Corlys to be in charge, that's how many people get appendicitis.
So, okay, that's good. I guess this isn't about House of the Dragon, but they are talking about doing a Corlys Velaryon show about the 9 voyages. Would you be interested in that?
Absolutely. And I can't wait to derail your talks to be slightly off topic for those as well.
Yeah.
This is how all these are going to work. Sheikh is going to come in, focus like, okay, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. And I'm going to be like, everyone needs to get appendicitis except Corlys Velaryon.
I'm okay with that, actually. Like, I like drifting off. Like, I can talk about this stuff for way too long. Yeah. Like, my roommates here are annoyed because I've been talking about this. But actually now they're like saying, like, let's watch together on the TV.
Oh, you're gonna get to watch other people watch House of the Dragon. That's what I'm excited for. Because the best part of Game of Thrones, having read the books, was not watching Game of Thrones. It was watching other people watch Game of Thrones. Mm. And you know what? You guys thought George was brutal in fantasy epic writing mode. Wait until you meet history writing George. That's like his evil cousin who thinks, like, history writing George thinks fantasy epic writing George is like cute. It's like, oh, that's cute that you did that.
Yeah, it's like, so George, when he talks about writing we're doing Game of Thrones spoilers, guys. Like, expect you've seen Game of Thrones. So when he wrote A Storm of Swords and he was supposed to write the Red Wedding, he said that he skipped that chapter and just didn't write it until the very end. Like, it's the last thing he wrote for that book, because he was like, I just couldn't get myself to write it. I feel like that's George in novel writing mode, because he's in these characters' heads, right? He's like, these characters are my babies. I don't want to kill them, but he does them. He does kill them for, the better.
He kills his children to entertain others. That's
exactly. But history writing George, I don't think he has that same attachment to these characters. He's just like, so this character, like, I don't want to spoil something from the show, but lots of brutal deaths, and I think we'll see. Do you think we'll start seeing those in season 1 already?
Yeah, people die. Yeah, because the thing is, like, in epic mode, like, there's a main cast of characters, and most of them are going to be there. Like this story is going to end with a bunch of people alive. But history writing mode, it starts before all these people were born and it ends after all these people have died. So it's not a question of if they die, it's when they die.
Yes. But like, I'm more saying, like, do you think we'll start seeing like the crazy stuff in season 1?
I think they'll probably try and get some crazy stuff in there.
Yeah, because I think so. Without spoiling stuff, I'm just going to say the term. I think we're going to end with Storm's End, probably. That seems like.
Yeah, I could see that. That'd be a reasonable place. I don't know though.
Yeah. Like
it's a hard it's a hard story, I think, to like figure out where their seasons are going to start and end. It's not like, I feel like for Wheel of Time, like I had a very good idea, but
and they're 100% following your idea, right? They're following your idea
reasonably. They're
really?
No, in terms of what books correlate to what seasons.
Okay.
Not really, but no, actually.
I was thinking you're going to go on the rant.
No, I mean, they haven't followed in that they've changed a lot more than I want them to, and I don't like what they anyways.
Yeah, I think, but you're still more fair on Wheel of Time than I think a lot of other people. Like, you're not as negative as a lot of other people are.
Yeah, I don't think it was terrible. I just think the last episode was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you hyped for season 2 of that, actually? Like,
no, I'm scared. I'm scared.
Okay. Scared.
I'm gonna watch it because, like, I have to watch it. I can't not. But like, I'm scared.
You should always remember they're doing what Robert Jordan would have written if he was still alive. If he was alive.
Stop it, Sheikh.
If he was.
Hey, Sheikh's roommate or whoever lives with him, can you please come in and punch him? Thank you. I can't. He's too far away. I can't hit him.
I'm sorry, but that's like the most ridiculous thing I've heard from that show. Like, I was defending him. Like, I don't have an attachment to Wheel of Time, so I was always like, whatever, get over it, guys. Like, to annoy people, to annoy Jirok mainly. But when he said that, I was like, what the hell are you saying? Like, that thing, and the fact that the people who are doing Rings of Heart said, like, we're telling the story that Tolkien didn't tell. Which I'm like, okay.
He told so many stories. How about tell something he did tell?
Yeah, that's something where I'm like, if that's your approach to the show, like, why wouldn't you're taking like 2 of the biggest fantasy series, why don't you market them to the fans who are already there rather than trying to do something to annoy them? Anyway, that's a separate issue. Let's go back to House of the Dragon. They are actually adapting the story that George has written. And also
it just looks really good, like visually, like it's night and day. If you watch the trailer, like that's why I wasn't even hyped for House of the Dragon. Then I saw the first trailer and I was just like, oh yeah, we're doing this.
The costumes, man, they look so good. Like
the vibe of the world, everything doesn't look too bright. Like things actually look real.
That's fair. Yeah, like I watched the Lord of the Rings trailers or the Rings of Power trailers yesterday. Actually, like I think I'd only seen the first one. I think visually it looks cool, but I think you're right. Like, it doesn't look real. And I don't know if
it looks like a really good set for a TV show. It looks like a really good set of a castle. House of the Dragon, the castle just looks like a castle.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, the actors were saying, like, they actually built a castle. Like, they actually built the Red Keep. Like, not the whole thing. But they were like, when we got on set, we were like, I think it was the person who plays old Ranira. They were like, so we got on set and we were like, these people don't know how to make TV. Like, you don't have to build the whole castle. You can just build a few sets. They were like, no, we're building the whole thing.
They just wanted a Red Keep. Let's be real. They were just like, I kind of want a Red Keep.
Let's just build it.
Let's just build it. It's totally. Actually, it's because it's needed for the TV show, right? Yeah.
No other reason.
No other reason. Nope. It's necessary.
Also, like, I'm really looking forward to see one Driftmark because we haven't seen it before. That would be cool. And also Dragonstone, apparently. So I think they've changed the location where they filmed Dragonstone stuff. But they said the way they've built it now, they have like smoke coming into the rooms and stuff because Dragonstone is on the volcano. So they actually have like volcanic artifacts that will be there. Like that will be just in terms of the vibe. I think that will be cool to see.
By the way, the guy who had the red keep built, he's going to write a book called "How to Build Yourself a Castle and Write It Off as a Work Expense."
That would be funny. But actually, like one other thing that I think it's interesting, like just because we're talking about Rings of Power. Rings of Power is apparently like 60 million per episode. Just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's been really good comments about like how much better HBO spends their money.
Yes, like the budget utilization is just better. But like House of the Dragon, they said they fought hard to keep it below 20 an episode. So like just in terms of budget, there's like a huge difference. So it will be interesting to see like where that budget went. Yeah, so since we were talking about like building a castle we need it for the show. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how
that's why they're like reusing all the other stuff. They were just like, we could get new stuff, but look, if we reuse all these other stuff and we spend it really well, it leaves us enough to build me a castle.
Yeah, actually, since he said reusing stuff, about the throne, like it looks super cool, right? Yeah, it's apparently like over 2,000 swords that they use there. And they had to get like swords from other production, like they got swords from The Witcher, from some other shows, because they didn't have enough to put there. Actually,
I just want to know one thing. Did they use the sword, like Barristan's sword, the melt it down and add it to the others? Did they use that one?
I don't know. I don't know who to ask. We need to reach out.
Time travel. Hey, yeah, we thought other stuff was proof of time. This is the time travel. Barristan's sword went from there and got melted down backwards in time.
Yes, that's how that works. I mean, time travel could be real. We don't know if you can transport swords or anything, but time travel, we had kind of a time travel moment in season 6, 7. 6.
Yep, that's what I was referencing when I was like time travel. This is the real time travel. Barristan's sword being okay.
Anyway, back to House of the Dragon. We're on House of the Dragon. So since I said that they are doing a story that George told, let's quickly get into the point that I told you before we started recording. Just one thing I wanted to get into. So I've been seeing people online, like there have been some articles and stuff where people are like, they're forcing 2022 politics into the show because the trailer makes it look like it's all about female inheritance and like they're making it all about 2022 politics. And I'm like, no, like this story.
It's really a stupid thing to say.
Like this story.
Yes, you've written that comment. You need to reevaluate your life choices because, believe it or not, there was conflicts involving sexism and like women trying to have agency before the 21st century. It's not a recent thing. Okay. It's also literally just a big thing in the book that's being adapted. So if you're complaining about this, we know you didn't actually read Fire and Blood and are an idiot. So all you're doing when you're complaining about this, you're just letting everyone around you know that you're not smart and we shouldn't talk to you. Yeah.
I wasn't going to be that harsh.
No, I'll be that harsh. It's really dumb.
So what I basically wanted to say is like, so this whole power dynamics for females isn't, as you said, it's not a new thing in the world, but it's not a new thing in George R. R. Martin works. First of all, this story, The Dance of the Dragons, George wrote it quite a while ago. The first mention of Dance of the Dragons, I checked it today actually. It was in the Game of Thrones in Brand's second chapter. And it was literally talking about like sister versus brother. So that book, it came out in 1996. So this thing is already in his head from then. Second of all, the books this is based on, yes, it's in Fire and Blood, which came out in 2018. But he wrote novellas about this, which came out earlier than that. So again, I think there's one that's called The Princess and the Queen that came out in 2011 or something. And there's one that's called The Rogue Prince that came out around that time as well. And then even if we ignore this story and we just go to the main series, to Game of Thrones or to A Song of Ice and Fire, literally most of the female cast there is dealing with similar issues. Like if you think about Cersei, like her whole thing, she has a whole thing with Robert in season 1, where she tells Robert, like, I should wear the armor, you should wear the skirts. Like her whole character arc is about the patriarchy and how like her role in society is different than from her twin brothers just because they are of a different gender. If you look at Arya, her whole character is based on this. If you look at Daenerys, she's fighting the same issues. You look at Brienne, you look at Sansa, like a lot of these characters, like if you go to the books, you look at Arya Martell, you look at Asha Greyjoy, like I don't understand where people are coming from. Like when they say this, like, did you ignore all of that stuff in Game of Thrones? Like, did you not realize that that was a, it's like a core theme in George's works. Like,
yeah, they probably are just people who like want to be like, oh, we have to follow the books, who like either haven't read the books or read the books like once 15 years ago.
Like, yeah, like I just don't get it. Like I don't want this to be
the only way to not have this in the TV show would be if they were like, hey George, we're actually changing your books a bunch to try and remove this theme.
Yes, exactly. Like,
which would be really stupid. Like, and by the way, that would be dumb if it was like, you know, if they were like, George, we've had to restructure the plot and a bunch of stuff because we want to remove this theme because this guy on the internet is upset with us.
Yeah, and like again, this whole section, like it's a 300-page section in Fire Emblem that covers this stuff. Like it starts even earlier than this. Like it starts with Rainey's. Before that, we have like Rainland area that also kind of have this issue with Jaehaerys down the line. Not explicitly, but it's a theme that's been talked about in Fire Emblem, not just in this context. And George also talks about he built this upon a thing in British history that's called the Anarchy. Maybe you know more about that than me. You're a bit more.
I'm not super familiar with British history.
Okay, like it's basically the same kind of story where the king, his sons die, so he names his daughter his heir. But when the king dies, one of her cousins just usurps the throne. Like,
yeah, this isn't a new thing.
Like this is like, I don't even know what the time period is, but this is directly pulled from British history. Like this isn't a thing that 2022, like HBO was like, hey George, like give us a story about putting females in power. Like, and I just don't like that that's kind of people.
Yeah, this isn't 2022 politics. This is like, I don't know, 0 AD politics probably. I don't know when the first time it came up. Probably like probably multiple thousand years BC. It probably happened in ancient Egypt somewhere.
Yeah, like
probably pre-Bronze Age. This is probably pre-Bronze Age collapse politics. If that's too modern for you, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to make this too political, but it's just something I saw multiple times, and I was like, okay, let's not make this show about this. Okay, like yes, that is the issue we're covering. Like one thing that I would have an issue with now, if they make this a theme, like it's a theme in George's work, but it's to start whitewashing characters to make it more in line with 2022 politics. Like if they start whitewashing Ranira's character.
Oh yeah, if they make it so like the characters, yeah, like if they have Ranira, it's like, oh wait, this person is like representing like a women's issue, so she can't do bad things. That would be dumb. Like, because that's a bad adaptation of the story it's telling. Like I would have issues with that as well, but that's a totally different issue.
Yeah, so that's a different issue than just being like, the trailer said men would sooner put the realm to the torch and see a woman ascend the Iron Throne. This is woke trash. So that's just something I was like, I saw it a few times in different articles. Like, why is this a thing? Like, yeah, I don't want to rant too much about it, but it's just something. I hope this doesn't become a main talking point with this show. Yeah. So please, people, read the books. Read history, I guess. Yeah, anyway, so changing from that, I have one more thing that I wanted to talk about, if you still have time.
How long is it going to take to talk about? Who knows?
Well, I'm mentioning it, and then you tell me how long it's going to take. So one thing that I think will be maybe a major challenge for them is the fact that how much time this first season is going to cover. So they have cast like some of the main characters with two different actors. Like we have two different Raniras, we have two different Allisons, because we see them at two different ages. So we will have time skips and recasts during the season. Now, one thing I'm worried about is like, how will they manage to show us that it's the same person? And how will they keep it consistent between both timelines? And that's something that I'm like, so at first when I was thinking about the show, I thought maybe they'll do like two timelines at the same time. Like we'll see young and old Ranira in the first episode, but apparently that's not what they're doing. They're doing it linearly. So we'll see like, I think the first 5 episodes, we're seeing young Ranira and young Allison, and then we're switching to the older versions. So how do you feel about that? Like, do you think that might be an issue for the show? And how do you think they should challenge that?
So this is where we start getting into like technical film craft, which is not something I know much about. So I don't really know. I'm trying to think of things where I've seen this done, and the only example I can think of is the Star Wars prequels, which had 2 Anakins. But that being said, as many problems as the Star Wars prequels have, I don't remember being like struggling with like, wait, these 2 people are the same person, but they were different actors. What other? I mean, we've had multiple Bilbos across multiple things, and I've liked all the Bilbos, and it's been like, hey, yeah, this is the same Bilbo. It's one of the things I actually really liked from the Hobbit movies was the Bilbo. So it hasn't been an issue. I don't remember ever having it as like an issue, but it's not something I know a lot about. I just kind of have to trust that they kind of know what they're doing here and hope it doesn't suck.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, so for me, the main thing I was worried about is, first of all, what happens when, let's say, the younger actresses do a really good job at portraying their characters, and then 5 episodes later you have to like switch to the new ones. Will it be jarring for people who like got attached to the young versions to be like, okay, now it's a different person?
So that's a problem they didn't have for the prequels. Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I don't see any way you really get around it, I guess. I mean, I guess you could do it non-linearly, but that seems like it would cause more problems.
I think doing it linearly makes more sense, but it's just something like, because we've read the book, like we know what's going to happen. So one thing I'm wondering is like, will they have a framing of this? Like, will they show us like, okay, we're skipping 20 years, or will it just be out of in context? It will be realized like you just need people to call them, right? Like, hey, Ranira, and then be like, oh, okay, this is Ranira now.
Do it in a way that, I mean, they'll have to figure out a way to tell us in a way that like isn't unnatural, but I'm sure they can figure that out. They're smart. Yeah, and so one thing I want to ask you now, if you were doing this now, again, neither of us is an expert in filmmaking or anything, so that is something that I found interesting. So if you were in this situation where you were making a TV show and you had like one person in the first half and another actor in the other half, would you make them talk to each other and flesh out the characters together? I don't want to put you on the spot. Like, it's an interesting question. I mean, essentially, I'm not going either way. I feel like yes, maybe. Okay. I feel like, I don't know. It depend on like, that'd be like the director's job to try to make it. Cause I don't know. Yeah, because they asked this question, like I think in the Comic-Con panel and also at the premiere, and apparently the younger actresses and the older actors didn't talk about it at all. Like they didn't meet during the filmmaking at all, which is interesting. And I think Ryan Condon, who is one of the showrunners, he said that they see young Ranira and old Ranira as completely separate characters because they have like this 15-year time gap, I guess, where a lot of the perspective that Ranira has changes. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Like, I'm very, very different from like 9-year-old me or something. Yes, I agree. So I thought it was really interesting because when I saw that question, I was like, okay, yeah, they'll talk about it. Like, okay, we tried to make them consistent, but all of them were like, no, we just didn't even talk. We didn't think about this at all.
And I was like, that's interesting.
But I didn't even talk just like, hey, other Ranira. We're the same person.
Apparently not. Like,
huh.
So I found it interesting. Like, I trust them that they know what they're doing. Like, and I assume that like young Allison. So the way I see this happening is that we'll see basically the young versions, and then when we see the old versions, they're already they've drifted apart. So I think we'll kind of fill in some backstory of the time gap. So I think it could work. It's just something I found like interesting from the approach, because I was like, obviously they would like flesh them out together, right? But yeah,
because I mean, there were obviously like childhood friends who, like, 8-year-old me would have been like, this person's my best friend, and now I haven't talked to them like in years. And even like in high school, like I knew who they were, but they were just like, and they knew who I was. But okay, yeah, I could see that being a totally reasonable way for it to go.
Yeah, like I'm interested to see how that plays out. But yeah, so that was one thing, like the recasting and like keeping the characters consistent. And the other thing is just the scope of the timeline. The fact that this first season is covering like 30 years, basically. Like, will it be weird to see that like one season that covers 30 years? That's another thing that I think.
So I'll say my favorite movie ever covers 30 years because it's The Shawshank Redemption. And that's in like 2 hours. So I feel like if you can do it in 2 hours, you can do it in like 10.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
That's fair. The Shawshank Redemption doesn't have like 30 characters.
That's true. That's true. But it does have a few, and it does cover 30 years. And it works. And it works. Yeah. And for some, even though like it's just like, oh, this person's hair is slightly grayer. Yes, he's aged 30 years.
That's fair. That's fair. Like, I was wondering if they're just going to put some events closer together, or if they'll just change the timelines a bit to make it more coherent.
Actually, wait, because 30 years, I mean, yeah, I think it'll be fine. Especially, I mean, they have multiple actors. So it's not even like Shawshank, they did it with all the same actors. And one of those actors is like old to start. And then it's 30 years later, and they're just like, they're still old. And it's just like, okay. Yeah, I think
that's fair. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, cool. I think that's all I had on my thing. Do you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of House of the Dragon?
I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be good. I'm going against what my plan was, and I'm hyping myself for a show before watching it. Although it'll be really funny if actually like we both watched episode 1 and like one of us or both of us thinks it's terrible.
I hope that doesn't happen.
I don't think it's gonna happen though. I would like to place a large wager that it's better than Rings of Power. I have no idea how good Rings of Power is gonna be, but I think it's gonna be better.
Yeah, I mean, Rings of Power is a bit weird. Like, I'm not into Lord of the Rings. Like, I've watched the movies a long time ago, and I don't even remember them at this point. So, I'm going to watch it, but I'm not sure. Like, from everything I've seen, people are super negative on it. Like, I watched the trailers yesterday, as I said, and I wanted to read the comments to see like what people are saying. It was all memes. People were just making fun of it.
For that one, I am holding out judgment until I watch it.
Yeah,
but like also, there is something very important I have to say. Subscribers of Sheikh, he had a pick for 2 months now. Actually, he's read one of them. Okay, where he has a thing where it's like his subscribers picks a book he read, and you all should enforce him and get him to read that. Are you done Assassin's Apprentice yet? I forget.
I was going to say, you're giving me too much credit.
Oh, yeah, no, you're reading Assassin's Apprentice. So, yeah, you guys, I need you to really put the hammer down on Sheikh here and be like, read the books you said you would read. We voted. You're going against democracy.
But I am Viserys. But you like this. You don't think Viserys did anything wrong, so.
No, that's not true. I just think he's not as bad as some of the other kings.
I'm also not okay.
He's like C tier.
Slight distinction. No, but I am reading it. But as I said, like, so I've been spending too much time like watching House of the Dragon stuff. So that's my excuse. Is that
don't let him get away with it, subscribers of Sheikh. I want angry comments.
No, I didn't do another TBR book for summer. So basically, the two I did was like winter, which is kind of sad. Winter is Assassin's Apprentice.
Sir,
And-
it's July. It's August. What am I talking about? I got the month there. Sir, it's August. It's closer to the next winter than it is to the previous winter.
I didn't say which winter. I think I should.
You
check.
probably did.
I think I did. So yes, I didn't do a summer run because I want to catch up on that. Actually, like I haven't been liking Assassin's Apprentice as much as I was hoping to. Maybe that's something you don't want to hear. It's good, but it hasn't captured me so far. Like it's not something I just want to keep reading.
Okay.
I keep reading Reddit posts about Emily Carey being harassed on Twitter over. But also, I was away for the last 3 weeks. That's another.
All right. Don't let him get away with the subscribers.
Don't let. I agree. Don't let him get away with it. But also, I won't make new votes until I read both of them. And so, yeah, Assassin's Apprentice and then The Shadow in Summer. Is that the title?
Yes.
That is
Maybe
yes.
A Shadow in Summer, The Shadow in Summer, A Shadow in Summer.
Yeah. Actually, we talked about like maybe reading that together as well. So maybe you.
Yeah, I'll have to wait until you're like 90% of the way through it, and then I'll start it.
Hey, it worked out with Fire and Blood.
It did. That being said, I was
It
reading
did.
that over like a month and a half anyways, and it still was too slow. All right, so everyone, make sure you dislike the video and leave an angry comment.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, anyway, yes, I am sorry for not reading Assassin's Apprentice.
And
but,
unsubscribe. Don't click the bell.
But maybe when I read Assassin's Apprentice, we can actually talk about it again on the channel.
How about
or something?
you just go read all of Farseer and hurry up?
That's also. It's not like I bought all of Farseer already. And maybe even more. So no pressure.
Anyway, I don't know if I got more to talk about.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's good. Yeah, I think we're over 1.5 hours. I think that's good. Yeah, so did I mention that we were going to do episode reviews? I don't know.
Maybe. We're gonna do episode reviews. There we go.
Yes.
It's
Nice.
been mentioned.
And yeah, so go subscribe to Jake's channel, because we're going to probably alternate between each other. Like assume the pilot will be on yours, and then we go back and forth.
Yeah,
Something
sure.
like that. Yeah, so do you want to like anything you're planning to do on your channel or you did recently? Or you go first, then I'll go.
Well, I mean, I've been reading books and talking about them. I'm very happy with one of my last videos, not the wrap-up one, which is pretty normal, but my Where to Start Guy Gavriel K video. So if you're like, hey, that's an author I'm interested in, where do I start though? I will have a video where I don't just tell you, hey, I guess start with this one. I actually try and outline the pros and cons of starting with various points. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think Guy Gavriel K would be good to read for The Song of Ice and Fire?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, apparently there's actually a lot of overlap in there.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
they're
I
both
heard
kind
that.
of like he's actually almost, well, George bases things on history. Guy Gavriel K is like, okay, one second. I'll show you what I mean. When I say Guy Gavriel K bases things on history, I mean like, all right, let's look at this map of the lines of our song. All right, ready? It's like, oh, 1 second. There's a lot of, okay. There's the map. You'll notice that it's Spain.
Spain without Portugal.
Actually, sorry, Canos. It's the Iberian Peninsula.
But it deleted Portugal, no? Or is it there? No, it's not there.
Also, Italy lost its boot. You can see for the Mediterranean below.
Oh, nice.
So huge changes compared to normal Europe. But I think
aren't there two suns in that world?
2 moons.
2 moons, okay. Yeah,
One sun.
Two suns would be weird.
That could cause problems, yeah. But there are 2 moons, and I actually would definitely recommend it to fans of A Song of Ice and Fire. I think it has a lot of cross appeal.
Okay. Where
It's
I haven't
better in
seen
some
it.
ways, worse in other ways.
I didn't watch your video yet, but where should I start?
Well, you don't read books, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I mean, probably the Lions Under Heaven, or if you wanted, you shouldn't start with an 1100 page book.
What's
You
the
shouldn't start.
1100-page book?
Well, it's technically a duology, but I consider it an
really?
1100 page book. It's
Okay.
the Sarantine Mosaic. I don't know. Probably just start with Lions.
Okay.
Love Lions. It's
Maybe.
also, for some reason, Lions looks thicker than all the other ones. It's reasonably large font-ish, and it's like 640 pages. It's under 200,000 words. It's not super long.
Can you show that font again, please? And you said it's reasonably large. I love
Okay,
that.
well, one second. Just
I know. I
comparison.
don't want to do the
Let's
same.
grab I don't know, the Storm of Swords.
Okay, that's unfair.
I would just like to say the font actually is reasonably large. Actually, this is the hardcover, so it's reasonably large font. I should compare it to a paperback. Hold that thought. Let's grab the black cover. So this is like what you see a lot for fantasy.
Yes.
And then if we hold that compared to this,
and
it's hard to tell.
And then this.
Yeah, so I mean, but you can tell this font is noticeably
No,
larger than this.
That's what I was going to say. Like fantasy fans have a bit of a weird skew. Like this is it's a YA, so it's a bit different.
Anyway, yeah, it's not as big as the font in Skyward, but you'll be fine.
Okay. What were we talking about here?
I think we were signing off.
Yes, exactly. So go over, look at Jake's recent videos. I also need to watch his Sky Gabriel video. Watch Jake's favorite video of mine, which is my Warbreaker review. And if you want more,
watch all of his other videos are pretty good. So
and yeah, for more House of the Dragon stuff, we'll be covering the show. And yeah, I made a video about the background and premise, and also one about the trailer. So if you're interested in that, go on, check that out. Yeah.
And all. Also, if you've read Fire and Blood and want to see like a really long spoiler talk about Fire and Blood, we have one of those. It's on my channel.
Yeah, yes.
And it has like one comment for some reason. It has a normal amount of views, but no comments. So apparently that means we just didn't say anything worthy of arguing about. Yeah. So that means everything we said in that is true.
Yes.
So
that's true. That's true. So, and for all of that, I have a House of the Dragon playlist. So I think our thing is in there as well. So you can just watch House of the Dragon playlist, but just watch that. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you hopefully after the first episode again. And I'll see you maybe before that. Hopefully about a book video. And maybe one more House of the Dragon video, because I have one more in mind that I want to do. Okay.
Your House of the Dragon channel now. So that's fine.
For the next, I wanted to say for the next 11 weeks. But I don't know.
There's going to be more seasons. So actually probably for the next like 4 years.
Yay. Like I'm happy about this actually, because I missed all the Game of Thrones hype. I got into Game of Thrones hype when season 8 was about to come out. So this is the most hyped I've been ever for a show.
Also, HBO, if you want to do a Lions of Our Song.
HBO, if you want to do any fantasy series that people like, please, because everybody else is filming apparently.
Yeah, that's actually true. I would really like you to do the Lines of Our Song, the Sarantine Mosaic, and the Live Ship Traders. Thanks.
Oh, bye. Okay. Thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll see you soon.